Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be telling you a ghost story, but before we get into the story, 90% of you are unsubscribed to the channel, so if you could just head down to the icon bottom right hand corner of the screen, hit that and subscribe to the channel. It's free of charge and will help me to make more content. So this story takes place in the 1950s and is told by a gentleman called Ray, who at the time was 12 years old. He would walk across this park every day for 6 weeks in the school holidays. He lived to the south of this park and would head across here because there was a small group of shops and a set of woods that him and his school friends would like to play in. So let's head over to the shops and I'll show you where Limbrick's copse used to be, which is the area that he used to play in. So Ray stated in his story that he would go to Limbrick shops, and this shopping complex here looks like it was built in the 1930s and 40s, and like I said, this was set in 1950, so I'm guessing this is the Limbrick shops that he talks about. All of this area, Ray says, was open field land and farms. Over in this area here, there is a housing estate, and when you look at old maps, it says that there is a copse of trees there, and Ray refers to Limbrick copse. So let's head over and follow the story along. So this is the area that the story takes place in. So Ray recounts that this was a copse of trees, which I'm approximately standing in the copse of trees, and there was an open field with a haystack in it. Haystack would be located over in that direction somewhere there. So the reason that I have decided to film it in this low level of light is that if there's a chance of seeing the ghost, she would be here at dusk. So yeah, thought we would film it in the environment we're most likely to come across the girl. So in Ray's story, he talks about a tree line that lines the side of the main road, which is now the A259. I've had a look on old maps, and that tree line was there back in the 1950s. So going back to the story, so Ray came upon the copse of trees, Limbrick copse, with his friend. He said he didn't get on very well with this boy. He was just a boy from his class at school, but they're going to play in the woods. I think a lot of local children would go to these woods and meet up and play, time before internet and phones, where everyone is playing virtually. So upon reaching the copse of trees, Ray said that he saw a young girl. Not unusual to see children by themselves, and in this area there were two farms, so he presumed that this child lived on one of the local farms. Said she was a little scruffy, greasy hair and a little bit untidy. Which is why I believe he assumed that she came from the farm. So just up ahead we have what is now called White Beam Park, but this was the site of the Ham Farm. Again, you can see this on old maps. So this would be old farming land, and the farm buildings were all scattered in this area. So here we find the woods that Ray talks about. Again, I've looked on old maps, and these are original woods, and you can also tell that these are original because when you look at some of the trees that are here, they're huge, absolutely massive, right the way up there. So massive trees. So today in these woods, it's a well-known area for wildlife. Again, look at the, don't know whether the camera's picking up, but again, look at the size of this tree. Absolutely huge. So in these woods it was alive with wildlife as it is today. You can probably hear the birds in the background, but probably not paved like it is today. It would have just been a trackway. So here we find the centre point to the story, which is there was a pond in these woods. As you can see, it's very dried up. We've had a extremely hot and dry summer, and yeah, still a pond, but basically this whole area normally fills up with water. There's even a little island in the centre. So in Ray's story, he would come down here, and this girl and him would look at the wildlife and talk about wildlife. She was very knowledgeable on the animals that were in the pond, the newts, the frogs, the birds that lived in the trees. Again, all of this fed into him believing that she lived in one of the local farms. So it's in this part of the field that Ray says there was a haystack. The haystack was basically hay bales stacked up together, and you could actually enter the haystack. I don't know whether children dug it out or whether they deliberately made an opening to dry the hay bales. But Ray and Teddy would go into this haystack and spend hours talking about nature and the wildlife. He had started to notice that her clothes didn't seem to change and were a little bit tatty, but because there were these local farms and there was quite a few poor children at this time, he didn't think anything of it. I just thought that she was a waif or poor child from the local area. He did invite Tilly back to his for dinner, which she declined, and on one day in the haystack he did offer her some food again, which she declined. So she obviously wasn't hungry, even though he said that she was terribly thin and didn't look very well nourished. So Ray and Tilly would play in these woods for 6 weeks, and they would take a walk up this trackway to another farm called Northbrook Farm, and then from there onwards they would head on to Somerset Lake or Pond. Both of those buildings and or pond still exist today. They would spend some time up there and then come back to these woods. Seems like they spent quite a lot of time together. So this is the trackway that Ray talks about, and located next to the trackway again is another pond that looks like it's been here forever, flanked by some massively old trees on it. So yeah, this is an old trackway and heads up to Northbrook Farm. So Ray says that he would spend every day sort of coming up to this area, just like a lot of other children would. In one of his videos he talks about an old flint wall, and I don't think this is the old flint wall, but interesting to see just in the middle of this woods, this old boundary still there. Ray said that he would meet with Tilly most days and they would walk this trackway. The Limbrick copse and white beam wood area was very popular with children in that area, and he met one of his girlfriends in the Limbrick wood copse white beam wood area, and amazingly this girl lived in Washington, which is about 5 or 6 miles over the downs, so quite a trek. So it just goes to show back in the 1950s people would walk these long distances, probably because they had more time on their hands. So as we get into this section here, probably not going to show up too well on camera, but this is one of the huge oak trees I mentioned previously on the boundary of this trackway. So this is the second farm that Ray talks about, Northbrook Farm. This is the old farmhouse. It used to be a pub at one point. It's now a privately owned house. I believe it's been split into a number of properties in there, only because there are a number of cars located outside. And across the road is the original barn for the farm, Northbrook Barn. Now has been turned into a community centre, so a lot bigger than it would have been. And on this side again may have been an old outbuilding or farm. This was part of the pub when it was a pub, but again has been converted into housing and enlarged. Here we can see the old barn doors there, now currently used as a scout hut and community centre. So this is the section of the wood that Ray recounts his final meet up with Tilly. He says that he was walking through these woods, and this was 8 years later, so he was aged 20, and he had forgotten about Tilly at this point. It was 8 years on, so he comes wandering through, and there she is standing in the middle of the woods, and he's taken back, so says to her, "Tilly," and she seems to recognise him, even though he would have changed considerably in the last 8 years. But she had stayed exactly the same clothes. And he talks to her and says, "Tilly, do you remember me?" And she says, yeah. He said, "You haven't changed." And he says, back to her, "You have changed," basically he sort of says to her that she is not of this world, to which she doesn't answer back to him. He then says that he hears a dog barking, turns away, and when he turns back, she's gone. So, but that wasn't the last time that Ray saw Tilly. So the story picks up 20 years later when Ray is visiting a local friend that lives on this housing estate and is driving down this main road area, and on the pavement he sees Tilly walking in the same field that he used to play with her all those years before. He pulls over the car to try and talk to her, but by the time that he's done that, she's disappeared into the darkness. He gets out the car and searches for her, but she's never to be seen. Since then, he's visited this area many times and hasn't come across Tilly. So that is the story of the ghost girl Tilly. A little bit unusual for this channel. Hope you have enjoyed it. Ray's original story can be found in a link below in the description, and I hope you've enjoyed watching this and have subscribed to the channel. Thanks for watching.